Hello, everybody. So welcome to SDEV 220. It's an asynchronous online course, but to start off with, it's often nice to put a face to the name. I'm Chris. Anytime you make contact with me, I don't worry about formalities. I do go by my first name, so just call me Chris. A few things to talk about this evening. Right before we started the recording, there was a question that I thought other people would have that same question. So if you want to ask again real quick, Ben.
It says on one of the assignments to use Visual Studio Code. My question was if we had to use that or if we could use another IDE such as PyCharm.
That will be perfectly fine. PyCharm is a great IDE. That was one of the things on my list. So excellent question. And just for others who might check this video out later, if you're going to make it here this evening, my personal favorite IDE to use is one called Spyder, S-P-Y-D-E-R. With the statewide course shells for the online courses, I like to stay as close as I can to the statewide shell. That way it's consistent. And as you move into other courses, your instructor in future courses will know what you saw here. Especially this one, because we are the very first people to take the new SDEV 220 shell and have to look for typos and things like that. So I wanted to really minimize the amount of changes I made just to make sure we can find all the typos and stuff on the first pass, because those happen, right? There's a lot of pages in an Ivy Learn shell. So if you see any typos, please let me know and I will pass the word on to the course developer immediately. So this one that I just pulled up here, this is my favorite IDE to work with in Python, because unlike some of the other ones, Visual Studio Code is way up this list. Even PyCharm, that's an excellent one, but that started as a plugin for Eclipse, which is a traditional C++ and then Java IDE. That's where it started at, and they had a plugin for working with Python, and then that plugin just kept growing and growing and growing, and eventually became its own thing. And most IDEs are like that. Python was kind of an afterthought. This one right here, Spyder IDE, it's really easy to find. Just search for, oops, not a shortcut. Just search for Spyder IDE. And make sure you put in IDE, because there is some athletic apparel called Spyder, spelled this way, that is apparently really good clothing. So it ranks higher. But if you search for Spyder IDE, you'll find this open source integrated development environment. That Python was not an afterthought on this one. The IDE itself was made with Python. So everything about this was designed to go with Python. It's got some nice features. I don't know, I'll just do a quick example. Store a string in here, hello world, print that string, just because I wanted a variable here, and then quickly run this one. So you can see things over here. We have like a variable explorer, so all of your variables you'll be able to pull up here, related files, plots. I guess I could do something in matplotlib. That would take a moment. Don't need to spend a whole lot of time here, but it's set up with Python in mind from the beginning. So I wanted to share that. But if you've used other IDEs, feel free to use whichever one you want. The course shell uses Visual Studio VS Code. It's not the full-blown Visual Studio. It's not the 15 gigabyte text editor, basically. It's a nice condensed system. It's a pretty good one to work with, but there are lots of alternatives. And usually when I teach this class in the classroom, I encourage looking at lots of different alternatives, see which ones you like, which ones work best. So just a few things about the course. The course policies should all be spelled out in the syllabus. If anybody has any questions, let me know about those. One thing that is new to the statewide course shells, I've been doing this in the classroom for a little while, so I was really, really happy to see this, is how you're going to submit your assignments. Have you seen that yet when you were kind of looking over the assignments and things?
I skimmed it, but I kind of didn't really read all of it.
Okay, yeah. So in your previous courses, you probably wrote a script, saved it to your computer, went to Ivy Learn and uploaded it. But when we're developing software, there's a very, very powerful tool. Actually, it's a whole collection of tools. Well, we're just going to look at one in this class, but repositories, which some of the earlier classes might have had a brief introduction to repositories, and usually with what they show, I always describe it as like we might as well be storing our code on Google Drive for all they show us about repositories. There's a lot of power. It's a very, very powerful software development tool. I've been using it in the face-to-face classes for a while. Started just integrating that as just a normal tool that we use instead of something in particular to learn about. But we'll be using repositories to submit assignments this semester. In particular, GitHub. So I wanted to talk a little bit about a few things on there to put on the video and address any questions about those so you can see what they're like. If I share my screen. I think it shows up in several earlier classes now, so most people have probably encountered GitHub a little. So I'll just create a new repository for examples for this class. What is this? SDEV. Oh, I already have something named that. Summer 2022 SDEV 220. That name will work. So repository, the starting point is it's a place to store our code, but so it would be Google Drive or Dropbox or any just basic cloud storage. Repositories have a lot more functionality in them as well. A repository for classwork. Summer. Some sort of short description. You can either make it public or private. I usually just go ahead and leave them private. It won't necessarily matter for class. READMEs are nice, especially when the GitHub repository has one project that you work on for years and keep updating it as it goes on, as it gets better and better and better. You have that README file and talk the instructions on how to use it and about it, and licensing can be important. And some of the standard open source license sheets are on here, the Apache, the MIT. So as you progress further, when you're making software that you want to either make available as open source or proprietary license, make sure it's a good idea to attach that to it from the beginning. And create a repository, and there's options where we can drag and use the web browser interface to upload code. It's somewhat restricted. There's little edit buttons everywhere. Y'all want to click around, get used to that. And after you write your programs, you'll upload them to GitHub and then just send me the URL to where they are stored. There's no limit on the number of repositories we can make on GitHub, so you could do a different repository for every assignment. Or what I think would make more sense organization-wise, and at least in my mind, is to do a repository for this class and then just add in a bunch of folders for the different repositories. And here on the green button, there's places to download. We can download it. You can get the link right here, which is a very useful thing. Buttons to upload files, but there's a better way to do that as well. Which one can I? Well, I'll open a couple of them. So if I go over here to Bash shell and type in Git, as in the name here, you'll notice that a bash shell immediately recognizes Git as a command, not just bash. If I go over to PowerShell, I have PowerShell here. It's on terminal. Git here. PowerShell also recognizes that as just a command that it knows what to do. So Git, as in that part of the name, is an instruction that we put into our command prompts. And well, I'm on a Windows machine. I might as well throw it in the third one here that I have handy. So you'll see that this is an instruction that our command prompts know. It's not just an arbitrary word. It was created by GitHub. Git was created by Linus Torvalds. Some of y'all might recognize his name from Linux, the creator of Linux. He always names stuff after himself, like obviously changed Unix to Linux after Linus. Git is Old English for an unpleasant gentleman. He knows he's difficult to work with, but for people like Linus Torvalds, everybody's willing to work with that. But it's not an acronym. A lot of people think that starting out that GIT stands for something, but that's old or common British English for an unpleasant gentleman, which he said is named after himself. So we saw the button here where we can just upload files to it, but we can also pull those files down. There's a link to in the Ivy Learn shell where they'll have you download Git SCM. This has a few extra little features from the built-in basic Git that is on all of your command prompts, including credential handling, which is really, really nice because if you've never dealt with entering passwords in command prompts over and over and again, or terminals, you can't see the letters. It doesn't even put up little dots like the password fields we're used to. So having something in the background manage your credentials is really nice. But along with this, you'll get several other options. One of those, there's a GUI, graphical user interface, where we can just work with things. We have access on our local machine to that repository. If anybody's curious, and the course developer for our course, Zach, is very, very thorough. So he probably went through every single step in GitHub and told you everything there was to know in the stuff he put in the course shell. So if you get overwhelmed and need just the stripped down starting point, let me know and I will make a short video to just maybe start with the GUI. There's also this Git bash shell, which is a bash shell, like what most people are familiar with from Linux anymore, but it's an operating system control language, so we can control Windows from that language as well. It's not, once it goes to the machine, it's all binary code anyway. So the text that we type in is completely different from what the machine runs. One thing about this is what I would recommend using that will be the most beneficial to software developers in the long run. This one will not have admin access. There's an official one. If you search for sudo on Git bash, you'll see this right near the top. You'll see this GitHub link here, and there's a command. Even comes with a copy and paste button. Just copy that and paste it in the GitHub shell, and that will give you admin access to manage a Windows machine from the bash shell if you want to use that. We can do all of our stuff with GitHub from here. So if I change directory to some working folder, documents, delete. I'll go over here. Well, I'll delete it this way. I forgot to empty my working folder before class. Wait, there we go. Let me try that again. So we have a nice empty folder. I'm going to create a new one here, make a directory. I usually call it get stuff, and then navigate into that. And if anybody's curious, I can make a short video going over the core concepts here. I'm kind of assuming people are familiar with the command prompt instructions. So list out what's there, make a new folder, give it a name, change directory into that folder. And the first of our GitHub instructions that can be very useful is to initialize it. So git and then init. And if you haven't seen it before, the dot operator always refers to the folder you're in. So you can see now this is, there's the folder name like was there before, but there's this extra little thing showing that we're on the main branch of our GitHub repository. So to actually connect to it and get that, we can add, oh, whoops, put that in backwards. Get remote, so remotely access our GitHub repository, add origin, and then it's the name of the repository we just created, which I probably should have just left GitHub open to do that. I have lots and lots of things on here. Hopefully I can find that one I just made. There it is. Which is this link right here. It's almost like this link. There's a slight difference. If I come over here and copy this right next to the download thing and paste that in here, you'll see at the end, it looks like the web address, but then there's a .git file extension at the end. So that connects us to the GitHub repository. And well, I'll come over here and look at pictures and stuff. I'm slowly working little bits and pieces about this over the semester. It can be a lot to take in all at once, but it is a very powerful tool. So you notice now there's some little hidden folder in there saying that connecting it to GitHub. Clearly it's a Git thing. And if we get pull origin, so we added an origin and we can just pull that origin, and we do have to say which branch we want to pull, even though it clearly says here we're working on the main branch. We're going to pull the origin we just created and the main branch from it. And you'll see that, well, I'll come over here. There's nothing there yet, just the license and the README, but it automatically grabbed those things, got them ready to down here on the local machine. So now if I was to create a new Python script, I'll use idle. That's a good IDE. The most basic one that comes with it. Sometimes the most basic ones are nice when learning a new language, because we end up without all the predictive text and then those little adding things. It's easy to get used to those and forget some of the little subtleties between them. I'll just make a little function here, and I'm jumping ahead a little bit, assuming that everybody has seen some Python before, since the earlier courses do use that now. The current shell of SDEV 120 and SDEV 140 both use a little bit of Python. Some of it is simplified or not simplified. Some of it is generalized so that what we see applies to other languages. But here we'll be looking at Python specifically. And I'm very excited for the new course shell, because the previous course shell, since the early 120 and 140 were updated since the old 220 course shell, at times it felt like the 220 course almost took a step backwards from what we see in 140 these days. So I'm going to write a function. Hopefully that looks familiar. If not, it will make a lot of sense soon. A function that we can call over and over again. Might as well do this properly. One thing we will see before long is what's called a guard. I'll put it in a comment. Our guard that makes sure it's safe to run code, because a program is built of lots and lots and lots of scripts, and they're all going to have different functions, different variables in them, different objects, lots of things coming together. And we don't want to accidentally run the wrong thing. So whenever we push the run button, whatever IDE we're on, whether you're in VS Code, Idle, PyCharm, Spider, plugins on NetBeans, whichever IDE you're using, whenever you push the run button, the Python interpreter will rename your file as main. So we can always check and do double underscores. So underscore underscore name before and afterwards. If that is equal to underscore underscore main, then that means this is the file we push run on. So it guards against accidentally running the wrong code. A good thing to put in our code. And then when, again, going with the assumption everybody's seen some Python before, the indenting lines. I don't think it's mentioned in the 120 or 140 class. The official statement from Python is 4 spaces. A tab will work just as well. 8 spaces will work well. 17 spaces will work well, as long as you do the same thing every time. You can't do 4 spaces in one spot and a tab in another spot. Those are different characters. So you do have to be consistent with which one you use. And the official statement from Python is 4 spaces for the indent. So if this is the thing we hit the run button on, then run that method. Nothing fancy here, just the basic one. And when I go to save it, that's the thing actually I want to look at here is with Git. I'll go into this repository, make a new folder called first example, and save this here. Say hi.py. So now we can run it. There's nothing fancy in this one. Check for typos. Where did the text editor go? There it is. The normal routine, type up the code, what we think is supposed to happen, fix the typos, and run it again. And go through that process until it works. There we go. Nothing fancy here. Just print out those words. And now we want to keep that around. So in previous classes, I've been doing this in some of my courses for a while because repositories are a very powerful tool in software development, and we need to see them. And it's kind of worked into the statewide shell now, once I enter all the passwords. In previous classes, you probably come over to Ivy Learn, go to the assignment, submit the button, upload that file, and save it right there. But this semester is going to be a little bit different. We're going to do it on GitHub. There's buttons here, 1 file we can upload. There is a limit. We can only upload 100 files at a time, and projects can quickly grow beyond that. In the spring semester that just ended, I was teaching the SDEV 248 class, the Advanced Simulation and Game Development, I think is the name. Those 2 words, it might have been in the other direction, the game development class, and we were using Unity. And the basic Unity project, if you just create a new project, is about 3,000 files, which definitely will not work if there's a 100 limit file upload, 100 file limit on the thing. So we need to so we save this into the repository, but the computer doesn't know about all of it yet. So we have to make sure it knows about it. So back in our command prompt, we call that git instruction and add, again, the dot operator refers to the current directory. Y'all might have encountered before, dot means to go up a file level, go up to the parent folder, and just 1 dot is the folder we're in. So we're here at the top level, so just add everything in this folder, make sure it's all there. And now we can commit to these changes that we made. And one thing it does need is a name, which is -m for some reason. message, maybe a descriptive, something to describe what it is. So like upload first example. And we'll commit these changes. Okay, there's one file changed, 9 insertions, no removals. We get all the information about what's happened since the last time we did it. And then just like how we pulled the origin down to our computer, we can push it back up there. Get push origin, and then at the end, which branch do we want to push it onto? And we'll see all this stuff. So 5 objects, it compressed them, all that stuff. You'll see that message over and over again. Hopefully what it's saying there will all make sense by the end of the semester. And if I come over here, you can see the repository now has that new file uploaded to it. So, and then to submit your homework, what you'll do is send me this URL. Or, well, there might be more than one file, so the folder holding those, or maybe just the overall repository, if the files are named nicely, like module 1, module 2, and like module 1 or module 3 case study or something, as long as I can clearly find what it is. Which I'm a pretty laid back person. If something goes wrong, I'm much more likely to actually ask you to fix it before I put a really bad grade on it. Especially at the beginning when we have a bit of time, because the ability to program a computer is a very, very useful skill in our world. I am much more concerned with correct than quick. So if you have any trouble, let me know. I'm always happy to help. And for submissions, you will just grab the URL to the repository where you stored it. Oh, there is another note on IDEs I'll talk about while I'm here. Let me go up to my working folder. So we will need to, we'll also be using Jupyter Notebooks, which has to be installed, and you can install it with pip. Maybe I should go to the other. If you're using the the bash shell that comes with from GitHub, the Python interpreter you have installed is set up for a Windows machine, so it can act a little bit funny at times. So to run Python, you would type winpty Python, and then we can ask for a module, maybe the pip module to install stuff. And we will need to install Notebook for this class as well. If you're in like PowerShell or Command Prompt, or running a bash shell on a MacBook or Linux machine, which is already pre-configured for a bash shell instead of just running bash on Windows, because it's a nice shell to work with, then you would just need this extra part. This is just a Windows emulator for a bash shell. It's built in, so you don't have to do anything special to get it. But say we're trying to run Python on a Windows interpreter in a Unix shell, so we need that extra little emulator that's built in. And then start the Python interpreter, open a module. We'll open the pip module and install this software called Notebook, which is already on mine. You'll get a whole bunch of messages. Mine all say requirement satisfied, but when you do that, you'll see the little meters going as it downloads things and gets it all set up. And then in Python, start a module and start the Notebook module, which is a server-based thing, so it has to run on a server. You'll see up here in the URL, a local host. So doing that creates a little a virtual server on your machine where you can run Jupyter Notebooks. And this is an alternative to the traditional just large text file, we work in small cells. So if I create a new one here and just quickly go over this. Once it's installed, you'll see something like this. And we have this cell, which can either be code or markdown language, which for those who have seen it, we are in a browser, so this knows what HTML is. So we can do like an H1 header, first example, and put some text in here. Then paragraph with, this is a mark, I'll underline it. Markdowns cell in the paragraph and some regular text. Just try to put it all in one spot. So a place we can do markdown cells, which just have text, or run Python code. And when you're ready to run it, you can push Control Enter or Shift Enter. If we push Control Enter, it runs that cell. And then once the cell's there, we can double click to get back into it and do any editing. And if you push Shift Enter, it runs that cell and creates another one. So there's a markdown cell. You can use HTML or regular text. We are in a browser, so it knows what HTML is. Then you can make your, I like to describe it as you can make your comments look really, really nice. Add in HTML formatting to, and long descriptions and have text and cells intermingled. So standard here, hello world, then Shift Enter to run that. And that cell is completely independent. It's our input number one, just does this, and we see the output right afterwards. NumPy, that'll work. Pyplot. Is that what I want to do? I'll just do this x equals numpy dot. Sorry, I was kind of making this example up as I went along and realized that maybe I should take a step back and use libraries that you all might have on your Python installation at the beginning of the semester. So we'll just set a random number here. So like random.rand, y is random.rand, print. And this is one that I know doesn't show up in SDEV 140, but there's a better way to print our strings and concatenate variables into a string. So instead of just putting a string here, if we put an F out front, that stands for formatted string. So we want to format a string. So F and then quote marks, and then the product of, and then in curly braces, we can throw a variable right in there. X and Y is, save that for good form. Product is X times Y is product. So that's one. It was more generalized, what you would have seen in the SDEV 140 class. This is the more Python specific one. And the nicest thing about Python is everything about Python is to make it easier on the programmer. There's trade-offs. It's really, really bad for the machine. Y'all have seen those movies in Hollywood, right? Where they talk about the machines rebelling because humans treated them badly. But then in real life, people put googly eyes on their toaster and give it a name. So if machines rebel because we treated them badly, it's because of all the Python code we wrote. That's the trade-off for making everything we can easier for the human. Let's see if I did that with any typos. Without any typos, if I Shift Enter to run it, oh, you see here we got our error messages. Oh, not random.rand, random.random. Oh, this line. And ran. So try that again. Shift enter. Oh, still getting error messages. Random has no attribute rand. Oh, am I thinking of something else? There we go. And the general process, we put our algorithm together, run a test, fix the typos. We get lots and lots of practice with that. But that's how these cells work. Hello world, and notice I can come back to cell 1 here. This is the first example. This is a rather trivial example to look at notebooks and run that cell independent of the other one. Then I can come over here and run this cell again and change the numbers. This one I know doesn't show up in the SDEV 140 or 120 class, and that is a much more Python way to do it. Everything about Python is to make it easier on the programmer. So just put an F out front for formatted string, and then in curly braces, say what variable you want to put there. Can give you nice strings very quickly. Should probably fix the grammatical error here. And there's run buttons up here as well. Things to move our cells around. They're all independent of each other. Can add another cell. For the markdown. And we can show text or code and intermingle them in a bunch of independent parts. So that is that's another one that we will be working with. So you'll probably want to install that. Alternatively, there is something called Google Collab. So Google, kind of in their Office suite, has included a notebook thing. There's a new one. What am I looking at? Examples recent. Why is this just opening things? Maybe I should have clicked on the first one. Oh, okay. Cancel that. I was looking at the filter thing. Close all this. There's little descriptions here. We go to File and New Notebook. There we go. That's the one I was looking for. You'll see that there's another notebook thing here. Some markdown text, which I should probably delete this. So I'll delete that first one. So click to add a text cell, some markdown text, and once again, hit Control in Shift Enter to run it, and we can enter either text or Python code. Print. Here's some Python, and when we run that, shows a nice little run button here. It will open up there as well. So we will be using both the regular Python files, the .py scripts, like we would put together in a traditional IDE, which you would have seen in the previous courses. We will also be using notebooks this semester. So Google Collab is kind of nice because it has more features than Jupyter Notebooks. Also, Jupyter Notebooks is a local installation. We have to manage everything. Google Collab is automated. If we need another library, we just import it. All of that stuff is handled right in the background on servers, and it was set up by some really, really good programmers at Google. So there are some nice features that almost make this seem like an upgrade on it. So either one would work. I believe the instructions on Ivy Learn go over working with Jupyter notebooks. And once you're finished with it, you can just save it here, save it to your folder. Save as notebook example. That'll work. So I think I saved it in the wrong spot. Yeah. And notice it has a .ipynb file. This interpreter that we're running through, instead of the regular Python interpreter, this is the IPython interpreter. And then pynb for Python notebook is the file type here. And I'll drag that into the get stuff folder. Put it there. So there's a change to it. Our repository's sort of been changed. Oh, I should probably show this. So that finishes the notebook. And the instructions always leave sort of this last step off. So I'm going to close out of it. When I come back over here to where I started that Jupyter notebook, you'll see it's still running. It's fairly standard in any of our terminals, whether Bash, PowerShell, Command Prompt. If you push Control-C, the normal copy keyboard thing, that is cancel in one of our terminals. And on Jupyter notebooks, when you start it up, you do have to hit Control-C to cancel that virtual server that it's running on at the end. Let me go back in that get stuff folder. So you can see I left that folder there and it still says has that extra little main part in the prompt showing that it is still connected to the GitHub repository. So I can just add dot for add all the current stuff. It's going to adjust things. So when I typed it up, it had just a line feed. So when it uploads to GitHub, they're going to replace that with a carriage feed line return. Carriage return line feed. That's typewriter terminology from the early days of computer stuff. It doesn't affect it much. Every once in a while it will. But if you think about the old wheels on the typewriter, a line feed was just turning that wheel that pulled the paper up a little. But usually when we want to go to the next line, it made a big deal on paper. We wanted to turn it up, do a line feed to go to move the paper up a little, but then we wanted to move our carriage back to the beginning. So that we would be typing at the beginning. It doesn't show up in computers as much because when we go to the next line, there's nothing there. So the only spot we could go on the next line is the very beginning, but not always. Sometimes it does make a difference. So we'll add that stuff in our folder, git add dot for all the current stuff. Do a commit for it, commit add it in a notebook, some sort of message so that we can identify this commit. Because also on a repository, we can roll back to anything we've put there. We can roll it back to any point in time since we've created it. We can roll it all the way back to the only thing that would be different is if we hit the delete button and completely got rid of it like it was never created to begin with. The difference there being that we can't quite get it back after that, but all of our commits need some sort of identifying message so we can get back to them. So one new file, that should be that notebook, 91 insertions. I didn't type 91 lines. So there's some stuff going on in the background as well. But looks like one file, that's what I added there. So git push origin main. We'll throw that back up on GitHub. And instead of using the upload button here, you see we can do all of this from the command prompt. And once they're here, we can see them. That's a rather trivial part of GitHub. Our notebook does render properly. So if you send it, when you submit them that way, I can I can see them on the repository. Any code you submit to me this semester, I will run it. And actually, I do actually run things and tend to give lots of comments. I say a lot, even sometimes I won't even take points off for it, just like, okay, like this, it runs, does what it's supposed to, but it might be a little bit better form to make some slight changes. Just looking for improvements, because I believe programming is a very important skill in our society, and it can be a lot of fun. I know I have fun when I'm working with code. It's like art, that creative aspect. I get that same excited feeling when I see a program run as when I'm playing the guitar or playing some music or painting a picture. That creative aspect, it really is a type of artwork, just a different medium. Our medium is electricity. So that's how GitHub will be an important one. Different IDEs, you have your choice, but you will need a regular IDE and some sort of notebook IDE as well. We will use both of them. They're very, very commonly used in Python. Python's pretty much the only language that uses notebooks. It's restricted, obviously, if you think about it, you realize that is something that's going to be restricted to interpreted languages rather than compiled languages, but pretty much it's a Python thing. There's some other tools. Starting this semester, we've started working in Udemy courses, which are really nice online learning environment. They have lots of tutorials, lessons, and things, but sometimes they're kind of expensive. Like most of the Python stuff is about 120 bucks a piece, but the school worked out a deal with them, so a whole lot cheaper here. Everybody should be able to get to that. I know there was some delay, but I heard earlier today, I got the email that said that the Udemy links have been sent out to everyone, so you should be able to get to those. Was it a setup assignment? Is it this one? Yeah, I think it's this link. Okay, yes. So you should have a link to set up Udemy. And at that point, this link here should work, and you'll see the ivtech.udemy course, which will go through a lot of the setup and stuff for the course. If anybody has any trouble with that, let me know, which I guess is, I had a couple other things real quick. There's group projects. That's kind of a big one. Yeah, the final project is going to be a group thing. That way we can do something big. Normally in classrooms, y'all have probably encountered this already with the prereqs for this course, that in a classroom, we're under tight time constraints. So we often can't do the big, interesting things. We have to do small things just because they fit in our time constraints. So to do something a little more interesting, if we work in groups, then we can do something at least 3 times as big. If there's 3 people working together on it, we can do bigger, more interesting assignments. I tentatively have put everybody in groups, but there's always some people that never show up to class to begin with, or may drop the class the first week. So those will get adjusted before we do that. The last thing I wanted to say was about contacting me. If you have any questions, I'm always happy to help. Any way you can get a hold of me will work. I have lots of office hours. I'm doing these two sessions this first week to kind of introduce the people to the course, go over a few things. You'll see I plan to be in my office almost every day of the week. 4 days a week, I'll be in the office for 2 different sessions. And when I'm there, if I'm not in another meeting, because obviously I can only be on one Zoom call at a time, I will have this link there, which unlike other instructors, I'm well aware most people do their work on Sundays, right? Trying to get that Sunday night deadline. So I also do online office hours on Sunday. It's a great time to ask me questions. The emails, any way you can get a hold of me. You'll know how it goes in our modern world. There's so many things that will give us notifications and stuff. It's just, the phones will just constantly be making noise if we don't start turning things off. So during the semester, when classes run, the only two things that make noise on my phone are text messages and Ivy Learn messages. Those are the quickest ways to get a hold of me. So go over the inbox and basically send the emails this way. If you haven't seen it before, I think this is our course. There's sort of a list where you can choose people. So it's not full out email. You can only send emails to people in your courses, but it's the inbox feature there and text messages. Oh, and phone calls, but I tend to be busy a lot of times. So it's a lot of time. I often can't answer a phone immediately, but a text message I will get to as soon as I see it. But text messages and the Ivy Learn inbox are the two things that make noise on my phone. So if you have any questions, reach out to me. And those are the quickest ways to get a hold of me. But there's lots and lots of other ways. Course policies are all spelled out in the syllabus. I highlighted this one in red. This is a really useful site. You can look through that. It's resources. It's not direct links to them, but everybody needs help from time to time. Might as well finish this video out with that. From time to time, everybody needs some help, and help's available in our society, but there's usually a big application process, and sometimes it's a headache just to find those applications. And veterans know very well what I'm talking about. Mountains and mountains of paperwork. I've helped quite a few people get through those mountains of paperwork. But somebody consolidated the application process. So what this is sort of a database of the help that's available. So I'll put in my zip code here in Clarksville, way down at the southern edge of the state. There's a couple places in my daily walk where I can see downtown Louisville, Kentucky. My regular walking route. It's I'm just a couple miles from the river, but there are almost 2,000 help programs right here in this one town. Just put in your local zip code, see what's there. Transit, help pay for gas. A lot of people don't even know this, but if you're working in the restaurant before COVID shut everything down 2 years ago, the government's still pitching in on your gas. That program has not ended. That's a really useful one. Food banks, we all need food sometimes, right? Food pantry, you can see what's here. So this isn't the direct help, but this is like a database of the applications and stuff and what's available, so you can get right to the stuff instead of spending hours digging around trying to figure out if there's even help for what you need. A nice consolidated resource. I always try to make sure that's in the syllabus. Otherwise, everything should be spelled out, ready to go. Try to get the whole course set up, ready to go. Everything was looking good. We are the first students to use the new SDEV 220 shell, which I'm very excited about. The old SDEV 220 shell looked like, it sometimes seemed like it took a step backwards from what the SDEV 140 class covers these days. So now we are moving forward, and Python is a great programming language to learn. Hopefully we'll have a lot of fun with it. So it looks like it's coming on 8 o'clock. I guess that was about all I had for this evening, kind of a start. Do you have any questions while I'm here before we go ahead and wrap this up?
Nope, I'm good.
All right, well, thank you. This video is going to be posted on Ivy Learn. There's going to be another session Thursday. Go over some different things. If you have questions, pop in, let me know. But you all saw where my office hours are on the syllabus. My phone number, any way you can get a hold of me is, if you have a question, let me know. And hopefully this is going to be a great semester. So have a good one, and I will see you soon.
Thank you.